Welcome, everyone. I am so glad to have you back for another edition of AMA with LCJ. You already know what time it is. It's Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, where I get to hop in and have some really great conversation with leaders, aspiring leaders, about all the things that occur in our world of leadership and corporate life. So I'm excited. Let's go. So first of all, thank you for hopping in and joining me. As always, I love doing these shows live because it allows for me an opportunity just to engage with the audience. And so today we're going to be talking about like how to navigate the busy season. Now, as you're watching this live, it is Thanksgiving week. You're right. Yes, you heard it. So Thanksgiving week here in the US. And so we are going to be thinking about and talking about this busy season. So for a lot of organizations, if you're in the sales consumer space, this season tends to be the most hectic. And so, how do you navigate that as leaders? But I wanted to actually take a click out, if you will, and then also be thinking about not just using this during the holiday season, but also let's be thinking about this as it goes beyond the holiday season, because there are different business ebbs and flows, and it goes from there. So we're going to have a good time. So before I hop in and toss up the first question, once again, thank you so much for watching and joining. I want to encourage you, please hop in the chat. Tell me where you're calling from, what you're most excited about this holiday season, and maybe even what is making you uneasy about this holiday busy season. I want to hear from you in the chat. So make sure you hop in and I can say hey and interact with you during the show. So, why am I passionate about this particular topic today? Navigating busy seasons. As I stated before, when you think about business and the structure of business, most businesses have an ebb and flow. Now, typically, when you're either coming into a season of busyness or usually you're going out of a season of busyness. And so I wanted to focus it on particularly how we're navigating them right now, given this time of year where people tend to be more busy either with work and or life. And I'm going to put a sneak peek out there already. We're going to be talking about work-life balance or work-life integration next week. So you're not going to want to miss next week. But today we're going to focus on really how do you navigate busy seasons, and then how do you navigate busy seasons as a leader. Okay. So we're just going to hop straight in. All right. So one of the very first questions that I got around how we navigate busy seasons is, how do you prioritize tasks effectively when everything seems urgent during busy seasons like Black Friday? So that was the question. How do you prioritize tasks effectively when everything seems urgent during busy times or busy seasons like Black Friday? All right. So when you think about how you effectively prioritize your task when everything seems important or on fire during a busy season, one of the things that I would encourage you most to talk about, and I think I even talked about this on a previous podcast, is the Eisenhower matrix, right? Not everything that is urgent is important, and not everything that's important is urgent, right? So when you think about the Eisenhower matrix, as you're figuring out how everything feels urgent, your job as a leader or a team lead, or even as like an individual contributor during this busy time, is to actually figure out what is urgent and important and prioritize accordingly, right? When you have all these things flying at you, you've got customer demands, you have leader demands, you have all these demands coming to you. That Eisenhower matrix will help you get a level of clarity as to really what that looks like. And so I know what you're telling me. I hear you already. I hear you already saying, you know what? Here's the deal, Toya. That sounds great. But even then, I still can't decide what's actually important and what's urgent. Here's how I used to kind of test or litmus test this. Typically for me, um, anything that came from my direct leader or her leader or higher up in the organization was automatically, for the most part, deemed important. Typically, those requests are urgent and they're usually coming from somebody. So I almost have a quadrant of who, when, where, and what is going to be deemed important during that time or during that season or whatever that looks like. Right. So if you're in a busy season right now, where maybe you're in retail, maybe you're servicing customers or your online business, and you've got all of these requests. Maybe right now in this season, if you say as a leader or you're in retail, you'll say, "Hey, actually, in order of importance, customer request comes first." Right? Or sales comes first, getting things out the door. Those are the things that are urgent, important. These are the things, emails are important, but they're not urgent right now. Right. So you see how you're able to kind of go in and really figure out with the Eisenhower matrix how you're going to be able to prioritize those tasks effectively when you're in a busy season like Black Friday. I know government spending, all of these different things, Cyber Monday, after Christmas sales, New Year's sales, you name it, all the sales that you could think of. So that's really where I want to encourage you to really kind of just think about what type of things or what type of roles or people or stakeholders are important. And there is a hierarchy because that's also going to help. Who's making the request? What is the request about? Right? What is the single most important thing? Now, that's kind of how I navigated it individually. Now I want to talk to leaders, okay? Leaders. It is so, did I mention how important it is that you help define, especially during busy seasons, what is actually important? The more that you can define it, the easier it is that you will actually give more autonomy to your team members to make decisions. One of the most frustrating things, probably as a leader, is you have all of these things going on. You're in the busy season, and then you're getting inundated by requests from people top down. You're getting requests from bottom up, right? From your team up. One of the biggest and like easiest stress relievers that you can do is actually being very clear on what's important right now and what's not important right now. And that allows them to have a level of autonomy to be able to make more decisions where you're not having to come in and make all the decisions, right? So that's really where I would start in terms of how to effectively prioritize tasks when everything seems important during the busy season. And some people have singular focuses. I like to say, if everything's important, nothing's important. So the more that you can get clear and define that, that's going to be the key to success when things get super duper hectic and busy. All right. I hope that helped. I hope that helps somebody because y'all are quiet today, but we're going to keep it going because I think this stuff is important. And somebody's going to come back and watch this video and be like, yo, that was good. I needed that. All right. So one of the other questions that I got, and I'm going to spruce it up a little bit, but can you suggest some systematic approaches for handling customer queries during high pressure times? Right. So can I suggest some systematic approaches for handling customer inquiries during or queries during high pressure times? All right. This is what I love. So when you think about how you handle customer queries or inquiries when you've got these high pressure, busy times of the year, one of the things that I think is super duper important is this. When you think about one of the key things is everybody's busy right now. And so as much as you can proactively communicate, that's going to be the thing. Because there's something that's really key about this question. This question says systematic approach, right? I quote James Clear, I swear, at least at least like once during all of these lives. But James Clear talks about you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And so, even before, like if you're trying to figure this out right now, heading into a busy season, you're going to have to find what we call the critical path to success, because you're going to need a critical path to success at this point because you're late in the game. But ahead of time, one of the things that's going to really help you in figuring out how to handle all of the inquiries that are coming in from a customer standpoint is, number one, knowing what historically has happened. Have you, like, is the chat blowing up? Are the phones blowing up? Um is the what's the word I'm looking for? I just had like a brain fart. Um like, is, your help desk, right? What's happening right now where that's going to be a high level of inquiries for you? So knowing where, sorry about that. Sorry about that, y'all. Knowing where that comes from is going to be really important in how you even create a system to be successful at that. Sorry, man. I'm just all over the place today. Okay. So that's kind of number one. Where your customer queries coming from? What does that look like? How do you do that? The next thing is communication. Where can you proactively communicate with your customers? There's a couple of ways. Number one, anytime right now during this season, maybe you have an automated that email that says, hey, thank you so much for your inquiry. We actually have a high amount of volume right now. Please expect a blah, blah, blah to blah, blah, blah response, right? That's one way that you can proactively create a system that really does help. It takes some of the pressure off, so where you're able to handle things more urgently and not feeling like you have to respond to everything. Okay. So that's one approach. Where can you proactively communicate? Where can you set that up to where you're already letting people know if they place an order, hey, we're going to get orders out after this holiday, all of the things, right? So that's one. The other one, automation and AI. I repeat, automation and AI, right? There's lots of chatbots that you can create where you can train it to answer questions that are most common from your customers, and you just drop that little query right into your chat, and like they can go in and then they're getting the responses that they need with not necessarily having someone there all the time. And then automation goes back to, what are some of those common questions? Is text? Is it email? Hey, thanks so much. We're handling this. Is it urgent? And then you're able to kind of start to parse behind the scenes, really being able to handle things. It may say, hey, like, I'll give you a great example. Guarantee you. So right now, pretty much from almost early November, I even think, most things you can return if you buy from Amazon, you have like until January for the return, right? And I think by doing that, you relieve some of the pressure out of the system for handling all of this volume, right? So it goes back to, how do you handle the system when you've got a ton of things and you've got high pressure and busy seasons? Number one, you've got to know what are the common areas where you may be inundated. Number two, so that's number one, knowledge. Number two is, at that point, you've got to figure out where to automate, right? And then where do you leverage AI even within this, right? And so those are going to be some really key factors that you can come in. You may even have like pre-written emails, pre-written responses. That's going to be your goal for this time of season and how you actually go about doing that. All right. Still going into talking about the busy season. So I hope that helps somebody. Definitely let me know in the chat if it's helped at all. You all are quiet today. It's so funny. Like last week, it was like all the things. And then this week, you guys are quiet, which I understand. You guys may be listening to me while you're trying to get through those last set of emails before you head out for Thanksgiving break. No problems there. All right, so I'm just checking, making sure no questions so far. I've got to. Ah, man, this this mic arm is killing me. All right, here we go. Next question that we have. Oh, this is a good one. Um, so this is more for leaders, and how do you build this? So what are some practical tips for encouraging a culture of taking breaks without reducing productivity? Ooh. Okay. What are some practical tips for encouraging a culture of taking breaks without reducing productivity? Really important during busy times. How do you figure that out? All right. So let's tackle that. Some practical tips. I think number one is as a leader to create this like, hey, this culture. Uh, I think we came out of this era. I think it's shifting what we call like hustle culture, right? Like I'm just gonna go and go and go and go and go and go and not burn out. And it doesn't matter if I burn out, I'm just gonna burn the candle at both ends. And I think over time, studies have shown, history has shown that there's a diminished amount of returns. At a certain point, you're not even like helping by just trying to continue to go. So when you're thinking about creating a culture, when you're thinking about creating a culture of taking breaks and making it okay without reducing productivity, I think the very first thing that you have to do and take in mind is it's all about balance, right? So one of the things is regular short breaks, right? Engage and encourage short regular breaks just as part of the work routine. And I think that goes even beyond the busy season, right? I think it goes more or less day to day how you're operating. So if you normalize just taking breaks, taking a step away, acknowledging this is where emotional intelligence and empathy really comes into play. Hey, I need a beat. I need to take just a quick break, walk away, then come back, right? Another tip there, idea that you can use is you can use a buddy system, right? Where making sure team members are reminding each other to take breaks, right? So this could even be I think this could even work in a hybrid environment. If you are in a hybrid environment with a high amount of volume, checking in on the Slack, hey, have you had a chance just to take a breather? How are you doing? Checking in as leaders, you can say, hey, take 5 minutes, right? These are all things that will be really important in creating the culture to basically say, hey, it's okay to take a minute, take a step back, and then hop back in, right? I'll give you, because I'm a believer in like telling stories and showing an example. As great as professional athletes are, right? Especially I won't necessarily use football because you've got two teams going in and out, right? So I'm going to use basketball as an example because typically it's a little bit easier. But what you'll find is everything is strategic, right? So you may have some of your best players coming off the floor. Sometimes they only come off for like a minute or two, depending on what's going on with the game and everything else, right? Like, um, but what ends up happening is they come back, they take a break, they take a beat, fresh air, somebody comes in, relieves them, and then they go back in and they're back cranking it. So like sports is just a good example of like taking breaks and the importance of taking breaks. Now, leaders, you know what I'm gonna tell you. You know what I'm gonna tell you, okay? Lead by example. Okay. It's so important for you as you're trying to build a culture of like, hey, making sure that you're acknowledging, hey, during this busy season, we need to take a beat, take a break, take a lunch. If you need to it's time for you to take a lunch, not working through your lunch during these really busy times. Leaders you've got to lead by example in this. I cannot stress it enough. One of the reasons that you're going to do this is because whether you want it to or not, how you work sets precedence for the whole team. Now, you could easily go in and say, as a leader, you could say, hey, y'all, like, here's the deal. You know, we're going to take regular breaks. You got to make sure we take our lunch. I want to encourage you to do all of these things. And then you don't do it. What does that do? What does that signal to your team, right? And I think this is something that we unconsciously do as leaders. I think sometimes as leaders, you go in and you're like, yo, I'm crushing it. I got to make sure I'm there for my team. And it is something that we're doing that is well intentioned. But what ends up happening is it ends up hurting the team in the long run because they're going to mimic you in the process, right? So just something to think about as you're going through and thinking through, like, what does this look like for your team, and creating a culture where taking breaks during busy seasons becomes a norm. It's not a thing. You don't want people to be like, oh, she's taking a break, right? Like that, right? So figure that out and what that looks like for your team within your work environment. But I think it's necessary. Okay. All right. With that being said, actually, I'm looking through the questions here, deciding which one I'm gonna to cover next. Um, so as we're talking about this, actually, I think this really does go into what we just talked about, which is leaders leading by example. And so I want to talk just for a minute, even around why and what leaders should be doing for their own well-being in terms of these busy seasons, right? So how can leaders ensure that they're taking care of their own well-being during high stress periods? How can leaders ensure that they're taking care of their own well-being during high stress periods? Okay, so during these high stress periods, busy seasons, leaders there's a multitude of tools that I think every leader needs to have in their toolkit, right? So one is thinking really about what your self-care routine looks like. Okay, so you're in this busy season, it's insane. I think there's a couple of things when I think about this self-care toolkit as leaders. And it's really like, it's not even revolutionary, it's not new, but I think it's something that can't be stressed enough, and that is think about mind, body, soul, right? So for your mind, what does your mind need during this high stress period? One, systems to rely on, systems and automation to relieve decision fatigue, right? Systems and automation to relieve decision fatigue is one of the things that you can do as a leader to take care of your mind during this time, right? And that could be having SOPs for everything. It could be having frequently asked questions. It could be automating some responses where you have it, knowing and understanding what's your system in order to get the team from point A to point B. If you're in the crazy busy holiday season, or it's government contract buying time and they're buying up everything right now, whatever that is, you've got to what's my system for checking in with my team? What's my system for keeping up with emails during this busy season? Systems, SOPs, automation is going to be the key to keeping your mind sharp during this time. Try to eliminate those, I would almost say, like, not mindless decisions, but those decisions that are kind of that could be farmed out or carried out and going from there, which leads me to my other thing that you can do for mind: delegate, right? Delegate. Make sure that you're delegating and all of this doesn't feel like it's popping and falling on you. Okay. Now, the next thing that we talk about, so we talked about mind. All right. Let's talk about we'll talk about body slash soul, kind of all in one. Leaders, sleep. Make sleep a priority during busy seasons, right? When you studies have shown over and over and over again, lack of sleep is equivalent, sometimes worse, when people have shown, depending on how sleep deprived you are, to being intoxicated, right? And so during high pressure, high stress, busy times, what you don't want is a leader who is mentally incapacitated, right? So think about it this way: you couldn't come to work intoxicated. Like, literally, you can't go to a bar, have a good time, and then come to work, right? That's how you have to treat sleep, because when you do that, you are mentally intoxicated because you're not getting enough rest. So during high stress, busy seasons, prioritize sleep. Make sure you're getting enough rest. That may mean that you got to be like, hey, y'all, it's that time of year. As much as I'd love to hang out, I got to get through this season. I need to get my rest. Because what happens is, I typically think like when the body starts to go, like, I don't know, like, does the mind go before the body? Does the body go before the mind? Nobody knows. I think it's like this it can all start to shut down if we're not careful, but sleep is going to be huge. Hydrating, eating, that, like, I'm telling y'all, I'm not telling you this um because I read it. I'm telling you it because I lived it. There are times where I look up and be like, I haven't ate all day. You don't think that's slowing me down? I'm going to pay for it somewhere down the line, right? Not hydrating, not sleeping, not eating. You're going to pay that rent either now or later. Something's going to come to where you're going to feel the consequences of those decisions. So do as best as you can. Make sure you're eating, make sure you're hydrating, make sure you're getting rest. Okay. And then soul, like, make sure you're staying connected to people, connected to community, encouraging each other, uplifting each other during this time of year. All of those things are important. Okay. So when you think about that, that could be mindfulness, it could be meditations, it could be praying, it can be music going, whatever it is that fills your cup. Make sure you're figuring out how to make time to do that during a busy season, right? So those are your tips, leaders. How do you handle making sure you're taking care of your well-being during high stress situations? That's your playbook. All right. All right. So once again, welcome everybody who's joining. I am so excited to have you. This is a really cool topic. We're talking about how do you navigate during the busy seasons, right? How do you get through the busy times of the year? Let me know if you have any questions around the busy time of the year, how I've gotten through it. What are some tips? What are some of your struggles in navigating? I want to hear from you. So make sure you drop any questions, comments, and I'll be able to see them and respond real time with you. All right. So the next question, I'm trying to decide where we're going to go here with this next question. And you guys are quiet today. I actually may be able to get through all of my questions today because y'all are quiet. All right. So one of the things, let me see here. Um, I'm looking through my questions, so bear with me. I just want to make sure. Um, I like this one. All right, I like this one a lot. All right, we'll do this question here. So, okay, what strategies can be used to handle difficult customer interactions during busy sales periods? What strategies can be used to handle difficult customer interactions during busy sales periods? Okay. One of the things that, I think about in terms of sales and leading teams and customer service during busy teams. How many of you all have heard like the customer's always right? That is not true. Sometimes the customer is wrong, but how you handle it is going to be all the difference, and what makes the difference on whether you can continue to create a customer for life or you lose that customer completely. Okay. So, one of the things that when you think about as leaders, how do we help our team and how do we handle difficult situations, difficult customer issues? One of the things, leaders, is number one, you have to train your team. train your team in de-escalating techniques, and then have a protocol in place when things go off the rails, right? So different people respond to stress in different ways. So you think about like fight, flight, or freeze, right? When you're dealing with a difficult customer situation, sometimes it depends on what type of day you've had, what's going on in your world, how busy things are. Like there's all of these pieces of the puzzle that you're trying to figure out in this busy season. And so fight, flight, or freeze is going to kick in. And so some people fight is their default. Some people freeze is their default. Some people flee is their default. And so, as leaders, by giving them de escalating tips and tools, that's going to be able to say, okay, hey, when we have a customer who wants a return, or a customer who has, an issue with the price, right? Like these are the things that we're going to do. And these are our policies that are put in place. Just by having some type of like system and protocol will help, right? Hey, here's when you need to reach out to me. Here's how you need to handle this. So if it gets to here, let me know and I'll intervene. If a customer asks to speak to a manager, you can make one more attempt to de-escalate. If they choose not to de-escalate, feel free to forward to me, right? When I think about dealing with difficult customers, especially as a leader, this is where I think it really is important that we take on the mindset. And I'm just a true believer that I work for my team members. And so my job and role is to make sure that they can do their job and their roles to the best of their abilities, with excellence, right? And so anytime I knew I had somebody on my team who was getting the business, I have no problem stepping in and being the bad guy in that scenario, so that I can ensure that like my team member feels like I have their back. Right. And so even if they're wrong in that scenario, I find ways to make sure that everybody leaves out of the situation whole. Okay. The other thing in dealing with difficult situations is, number one, don't take things personal, which is hard, right? It is not, a dissatisfied or difficult customer during very busy times is not an indictment on your character and who you are. So helping your leaders even understand that when your team members are dealing with difficult customers and difficult people, when things are busy, that stress level is already high. So something that seems little starts to feel big. And then even after that point, that, it just starts to mount up. And so you have to remember to remind the team, hey, here's our standard. Here's how we show up with excellence. And by the way, like make sure you're not taking those things as personal as possible, right? Jess, what's up, Jess? Jess says easier said than done. This is correct. I'm not saying any of this is easy, but this is where I think having protocols or procedures, or having those discussions during these very busy seasons, or when you don't have the time to do it, starts to make the process easier. When we're having to navigate all the difficult situations with difficult customers, difficult stakeholders, and it's busy, this is when I think we're most prone to make mistakes, when we don't have something put in place, right? So that's how I would handle, when you're dealing with difficult customer, difficult stakeholders, difficult leaders, all of that during the busy season. It's making sure that you're training your team, understanding, hey, do they understand how to de-escalate? Do they have an issue? I'm really big on empowering them to empower themselves. If they've made a decision and they're confident in their decision and why they've made their decision, I try to back my team up as much as possible. If I have to intervene, I know what I'm intervening to, and making sure that at the end of the day, everybody walks out whole. Leader, team member, customer, or stakeholder. That's the key. That's the objective when you're dealing with difficult customer and stakeholder interactions, especially during busy times. All right. I hope that helped. All right. We're flying through questions today. So, since you all are quiet, definitely let me know, what questions do you have around busy times and busy seasons? Just like the holiday season, what are you most concerned about? What's frustrating to you? I want to be able to help you as well. And so we're going to continue to figure out what other questions I've gotten really around this. And then we'll go from there. And I'm gonna queue up the next question, and I'll give you guys just a minute to see if you have anything for me. If you don't, we're gonna hop into the next question, uh, because we can. All right. Let's see. Oops. Did I add that? I did not. All right. Okay. So here we go. Lost that question. All right. So I'm looking at the comments across all the platforms. I don't have any questions. So I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss any questions before I went on and popped the next one. Pop the next one up. Okay. This next one is, how can we effectively manage team communication during hectic periods like Black Friday? All right. How can you effectively manage team communication during hectic periods or busy periods in your business, such as Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or other busy seasons in your world? Um, ooh, Jess, I got your question. I'm going to answer that one as soon as I answer this one. Um, so one of the biggest things that I would say is, when you're trying to manage your team communication during busy seasons, one of them is like daily stand-ups. Depending on the nature of your business, when things are super duper hectic, having a 15-minute huddle at the start of the day makes a world of difference. When I was in my sales life, we had 15-minute huddles before every shift. Those became very important and almost like a lifeline during those busy times of like Black Friday, Cyber Monday. I was in computer sales, y'all. So you could you could imagine, we called it working bell to bell, 7 to 7, 9 to 9. You're doing 12-hour days for 4 days. Like, it was insane. But it was also some of the greatest times because we built such a great culture. And so making sure you have that team communication, daily briefings if needed in the nature of your business. When things get busy, you may need to have higher amount of touch points with your team, right? To make sure that you're aligning on your goals, aligning on your process. Make sure that you're using some level of a collaborative tool for real-time updates and to avoid any miscommunications. That's Slack, that's Teams, that's, I don't know, what else do people use? I mainly Google Chat, I guess. Whatever your means is, like a real-time way to make sure everybody's updated. Some people, it's the walkie-talkies if you're in store and in retail. And then the other thing that's going to become really important is making sure that you're engaging in some type of open dialogue, checking in with your team, making sure that any concerns that they have are taken care of and are important as well. So that those pieces of the puzzle become really, really important in terms of managing team communications during really hectic seasons and busy times. Okay. All right. Jessica has a question. So she says, one of the struggles they have is during busy seasons, navigating the busy season means monitoring time off. How? So, oh, I guess, okay, that was the continuation. How do you ensure you get time off too? If not appropriate, then it's okay. Okay, no, this is a good question. These are great questions. So I'm going to answer the first, and then we'll get into the second piece of the puzzle. So how do you navigating the busy season means monitoring the time off, and how? Typically, depending on the nature of your organization and your business, some businesses have what we call blackouts, right? Which basically meant during that time, nobody was going to be allowed time off. and there was an understanding of that, right? And so that was one of the ways that you can establish it ahead of time, right? Once again, we're going to go back to James Clear. Rise to the level of your goals, fall to the level of your systems. So during the busy season, when you're trying to think about how to navigate the time off, where people are asking time off during busy seasons or just this time of year when everybody's busy, if you will, um, it is, hey, like, hey, during this time from October to January 7th, or from November, the start of November to the second week in January, here's our policy. Here's the standard that we're going to set for time off for our team, right? It's going to be time off, it's going to be first come, first serve. During the week of Christmas, we're going to run a skeleton crew. So if you're off these days, my expectation is that you work these amount of days, right? So the more that you can figure out like a system and be able to like put that and communicate that out to your team, on what your expectations are for time off during that time, that is where I think it really does help and it becomes important. And then going from there, right? So that's how I would do it, in terms of the teams. It was a little bit different for me, because I was in tech and in on the corporate side, not necessarily on the retail side anymore, in tech. And so that season looked a little bit different for me this last season, because typically what I'm looking at the end of the year are my team members who have not taken time off, and I'm making them use their time, right? So it was a little bit different, because it's like, hey, make sure you're utilizing your time off. So it was a little bit different, and we didn't have a ton of requests. And so for our time of year, this time of year when a lot of people get busy or they're heading into the new year. Depending on the nature of the business, sometimes it's not this holiday season; it's the start of the year that immediately becomes hectic. That's where you've got to just kind of figure out, hey, maybe I need to be looking at November, December, January, and making those decisions on your business there. Right. So that's our job as leaders. You're running a business. It just looks different for different industries, different types of businesses, different types of organizations. But technically, as a leader, you're running your organization. So, what does November, December, January look like? And then, what can your business handle with time off as far as workload? And then, what does that look like? And then, communicating out to the team your expectations on how you're going to handle time off. I'm gonna pick first come, first serve. That's it. So if you don't get your time in, sorry. Right. That could be how you're going to handle that. And I think also, especially, I'd say for my leaders who are in the middle, where you're leading individual contributors, you're not necessarily a leader of a leader. I would say I'm always really big on saying, hey, I would talk to my leader and say, hey, this is what I'm communicating to my team. Thoughts, I just want to make sure we're in alignment. So I usually make sure that my person, who my team member skip level, is also in alignment with what I'm communicating, just in case somebody's not happy. It's already been communicated up, right? And so then that kind of ties everything in a nice, neat little bow, if you will. Hope that helped. That was a good question, Jess. Okay, so then the second question is, how do you unless I made that two questions. Hopefully, I'm not sure if it was two questions or I made it two questions. Either way, I appreciate it. So do you ensure how do you get your time off too? If not, then it's okay. So how do you ensure that you get your time off too? This one's tough as a leader. Um, Okay, hold on. I got a lot of thoughts rolling up. This is a good question, but it requires kind of retroactively thinking through things. And it's really important as leaders that you have trust in your team while you're away. And typically, what that means is you should be duplicating parts of yourself or duplicating yourself in the process, right? So, who can act as a proxy on my team while I'm out? If you don't have anybody like that, or you guys are out at the same time, then this is where it becomes harder as leaders to take time off, right? How and when and where you take your time off can even vary, right? So typically, um, for me, like my out of office would say, for like the 2 weeks, I'll just give you an example. It's very interesting. I've had different senior leaders, right? I've had senior leaders who said, um, they would say, uh, put me as your backup, or you need to be the backup. You're the backup for everybody who's out, and then put a phone number in case you need it. Hey, I'm offline, enjoying the holidays. If it's urgent or important or you need me, please call me here, right? So I've had that, right? Like the leader, this is what you do. Put me as your out of office. That's kind of one school of thought. That leader then has an out of office reply that says, hey, I will check email very sparingly during this time. If it's urgent, call me or text me, right? I've also had a leader who says, so that's kind of part one. I've also had a leader say, hey, if you're off, you're off. Everybody needs to be off. Don't put anybody as you're out of office. You're just out of office, and whatever's there can wait. Right. If I'm being honest, I'm wired more to one than I am to two. Because I really do think it's important as a leader to have my team unplug. It's important for me to unplug. So typically what I did was I say, hey, put me as your backup. If you're off for the holidays, I'm your backup, put your information. And then when I'm off as well, my out of office says, I'm out of office. I can't reach, if it's urgent, I'll be back on this date. If it's urgent, um, please reach out to me, using this phone number, text or call, or leave a message here. And that's typically what I've done. And most times, the reason why I do this is here's what I find. Most people won't even take the extra step to reach out because it's probably not that important and it can wait. And so that's how I've been really able to leverage that time off as a leader. One of the other things that I do is because I know that like I may be sparingly checking emails. And this is the other thing as leaders, you have to be disciplined. They're like, okay, I'm going to hop in, check email real quick, make sure nothing's on fire since I'm kind of backing the team up during this time. Nothing's on fire. Great. I'm going to dip, right? Being disciplined in that and like my time and what I'm doing. But typically what I also did was after the holidays and the team is back up and running, I will take legitimate time off, typically at the start of the year or planning time off where I'm able to do that. So really good question. I know that was a lot of options, Jessica, but I hope that really helped in terms of how you balance that because it is different as leaders because we are, business doesn't always stop depending on what type of business you're in, what role you're in, and like really what's also coming down the pipe at the start of the year. So how do you balance that is just knowing what work is coming up, what systems can you put in place, communicating those things with your team. And then last but not least, like what's your backup plan for you? But I can't stress enough making sure you take time off as well because you're going to need it. You have to, as leaders, you got to have some unplugged time because once again, like I said, it is equivalent not taking time off, especially figuring out those breaks during these busy seasons. Jessica, I don't know if you were on earlier, but one of the things I talked about was mental fatigue and lack of sleep as leaders is equivalent to mental intoxication. So that's how we have to treat like making sure we're not burning out during these busy seasons because you can't come to work intoxicated from the bar. You shouldn't come to work mentally intoxicated. as well, because you've not had enough sleep, you're not taking care of mind, body, soul, all of those things. So that is how I think about really navigating these busy times, is doing that. Okay. All right. I think I am out of questions for the sake of not repeating a ton of things. We've talked about customer service. We've talked about the culture of taking breaks. We've talked about systematic approaches to customer queries during high pressure times, how to prioritize tasks. First of all, we are heading out. I'm excited to be even myself, probably taking a little bit of a break, at least Thursday, Friday. Tomorrow's going to be a catch up. Well, the rest of the day and tomorrow's going to be a catch up day for me. But I will say thank you so much for everybody who's tuned in, who's watched. I am forever grateful. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into or going into by doing these lives. And for me, I'm committed to showing up every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, period. I'm just committed to showing up. And so I'll show up until I run out of topics. And I don't think I'm running out of topics anytime soon. But thank you. And so I just really hope that you take time to spend with your family during this holiday season, but also like practicing that gratitude, and making sure that, I want to hear what you all are thankful for, as we're getting ready to round out today's live. So if you want to drop in the live something that you're thankful for, I'd love to see it and hear it. But I am thankful for every single person who supported me in this journey. I did not know what I was going to do or what my next steps were when I chose to take the leap and become a corporate dropout. But it's by far proved itself to be one of the best decisions I've made, and I've enjoyed this journey. And I hope that you all stay with me along this ride. And every week we're just gonna get, I grew up I grew up like in old Black Baptist churches where they say, I'm just gonna get gooder and gooder, right? Like I had to use the bad English for that. But my hope is that week over week over week, these get better and better and better. And that's really what I'm looking for, is to get through the rest of this year doing these lives. But how do I take them up to the next step come the start of the year, right? I hope to do more teaching, as well as being able to kind of come with some topics, and maybe even some slides, and going from there. So that's my hope. That's the long-term goal. I want to encourage you, if you are watching on LinkedIn, please make sure you hop over to Culture by Design. That's Culture X Design with LCJ, and subscribe there. You're going to start to see more content being put up over there soon. And thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoy, have lots and lots of fun. Just remember, calories don't count on Thursday. Just enjoy the time with family, rest, relax, recharge. And with that, I'll see y'all next week, Tuesday at 2.